everyone. Welcome back to the L.A.M.E Book Club podcast. My name is Melissa.
I'm Ellie.
And this is another week of hot goss with unpopular sauce. So hope you guys are ready for what we have for you today. Ellie, do you want to go ahead and let the people know what we're talking about?
Yes. Hello, people. So today we are going to talk about, how do we put this? Just kind of the style of writing that Sarah does. It's not going to necessarily be theories, but more just questions we have and assumptions we make based on like redirects that Sarah does that we're pretty sure are redirections, but we can't necessarily confirm. So we're just gonna get into all of that because sometimes we read the book and we're like, what just happened? It really didn't seem like things were gonna go this way. Not in the point of like a plot twist, but to the point of like, did she completely change her mind? And I feel like we've all been there. So let's talk about it.
And also so that you guys know too, before we jump in, Ellie has looked into these and come up with everything that we're talking today, and I have no idea what we were talking about, so I will be hearing them for the first time along with you. But with that being said, I'm gonna make an assumption. I think some of these have been publicly stated, so some are not gonna be like huge surprises. Some have not been confirmed, and they're just our assumptions, or I guess Ellie's assumptions. And then lastly is probably just things that we've seen online that we're just going to talk about. If I had to guess, am I right?
Yes, and no.
Oh, okay, never mind that.
But mostly right.
Okay.
Yeah, some of these are my own assumptions, so just be gentle with me because I'm trying my best. I'm just a girl. All right. So let's start here. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. Wait, one more time before we do that. Thanks for being here. If you don't already follow us on Instagram, go ahead and do so. It's at L.A.M.E Book Club Pod. Same goes for YouTube. Subscribe there. And if you listen, go ahead and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. You could leave like an actual written review. So even if you listen on Spotify, if you could leave us a written review on Apple Podcast, that would be excellent. And that's all. So yes, go ahead. Take it away, Ellie.
Yes. And then... You know us, we love prefaces. So one more preface to the episode. This episode is for people who have read all 15 of SJM's books because there's going to be endless spoilers and we don't want to ruin it for you. So if you have not read everything, come back when you have, or start Throne of Glass, read through what you can. Join us for Wednesdays. We're on Queen of Shadows, and it's a good time. Okay, Now are you ready?
I am so ready.
Okay. So there are definitely different writing styles in the writing world and the author world, which I am not in. But one of these styles that we're going to really hit on today is the style that seems like the one that SJM just loves the most. And that falls under the category of a, quote, pantser, meaning someone who flies by the seat of their pants. They plan very little and value freedom. They discover their story as they write it. So it's not necessarily like they're unorganized. They enjoy just coming up with it in the moment, what they feel. A mood writer, if you will. Like we're mood readers. Yes.
That tracks.
So, we know this about Sarah J. Maas based on several interviews that she has given. One more recently that she had with the show Today, where she was asked if she has anything written down for her books. And she said in response, I have little notes scribbled in notebooks, but with my books, I have this encyclopedia in my head where I keep track of it. Is this admirable or problematic? The readers seem to be split recently.
I would say,
so,
for the most part, it's admirable until recently.
Agreed. Until recently. And we're going to talk about that. So I don't think that there was any problem with exactly what we just said with this whole writing process until House of Flame and Shadows came out. And the majority of the fans were pretty upset with that storyline. I looked up some reviews on Goodreads just to kind of see, like, are we really upset? We're really upset, I guess.
Yep.
Some reviews stated that plot lines... We are. Some reviews stated that plot lines seem to go nowhere and others seem to go everywhere. So... let's talk about the risk of being a pantser and what plot points could be problematic at this point. So, number one, originally, and we all might know this by now, but Lucien and Nesta were supposed to be mates. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yes, I remember seeing an interview where she talked about that, and then she was talking about, like, as she was writing it, she realized that Nesta would just completely eat him alive, like, personality-wise.
Right.
And she's like, this isn't gonna work. So then she completely redirected. But, yeah, I remember reading that.
Yeah. So that blew my mind at first. And so Sarah talks in an interview about how sometimes she doesn't realize how little chemistry, exactly what you said, that two people have until they're on the page. And that was the case with Lucien and Nesta. She would eat him alive. So, however, she had foreshadowed the matings with Feyre's paintings on the dressers, right? So Feyre painted stars for herself, fire for Nesta, which would have made sense if she were to be mated with Lucien. She would have ended up, in the autumn court. And then flowers for Elaine. But now that Nesta has ended up with Cassian, it almost seems like she had to write the fire in as Nesta's cauldron stolen power. And it just, the storyline worked out, I think, but it also, to me, even as I was reading it, seemed like, what the heck? Like, it was forced almost, because we didn't understand her power and there wasn't a lot of description into it. And then it was like, if Feyre's foreshadowing was she was going to end up in the night court, why was Nesta's fire, especially because she had to give the fire, or she gave the fire back to the cauldron? So, like, it seemed a little bit choppy to me.
Yeah. So I actually disagree just a little bit. I think knowing, like, that she originally was intended to be with Lucien, the fire makes way more sense. But I think because I didn't know about that until after I had read all the books. And so to me, I didn't even take it so much as, like, her power. I took it more as just, like, her fiery spirit and personality, because she kind of always had that. And so yes, the stars were Feyre and how she was kind of destined to be in the night court. I just assumed it was the drawers had something to do about, like, with each girl, not necessarily, like, each girl's mate,
who they end up
like,
with. Yeah,
the night court was, to me, it actually, even because of that, had less to do with Rhys and had more to do with Feyre and where she would end up. The fire had more to do with Nesta's personality and kind of where that would take her. And then I guess TBD still on Elaine, but
sure,
it's still, even now, with before we even know, like, the end of her story, to me the flowers make sense already. So I think knowing that now, obviously, like, I know, like I said, the intention was different, but I think she pivoted well still.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and so I wrote that and I said, I just feel like this left more ends to be cleaned up than what was originally intended. Like, I feel like maybe it was supposed to be a clean, Lucien's her mate, fire, makes sense, and then, move on. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because she cleaned it up well. So I guess to you listeners, what's your take? Do you feel like it became more choppy? I know when we went over A Court of Silver Flames, you and I think, found a few more problems with that book than we originally felt when we were reading it for the first time. Agreed. Yeah. And I feel like that might have to do with the redirection.
Totally. Yeah, possibly. For me, rereading it, I definitely noticed a lot more than I did the first time. The first time, I think I was just so enveloped in, like, the story and the newness of it and wanting to know what happened next, so that once I was reading it again, I knew what was going to happen and I was paying a little bit more attention to the smaller details. I felt like the villain story was the weakest in Silver Flames versus all of the other books, at least in that series. And there were some of the characters, I don't know, maybe just, like, weren't quite as developed. Not Nesta and Cassian, because I think Nesta and Cassian's development is probably some of my favorite in the entire series. But some of the side characters, I just wasn't as interested, I guess, in them as some people or as I think I could have been. But for the most part, the biggest issue for me was just, like, the villain story. It felt really forced. It didn't really feel like there was enough angst, or I don't know. It felt like teenage angst and not, like, a true, like, hatred, kind of the way, like, Hybern felt.
Sure.
But or honestly, even Amarantha. But I definitely agree. I feel like reading it through a second time, I noticed more I don't even know if inconsistencies are the right word, but just more, I had more issues with it than I did the first time.
Yeah, it wasn't as fluid as the first 3 books. But you know what I think would have been, I don't want to say a better redirection, but a very interesting redirection that would have really fit in.
What?
Is Nesta and Eris.
Well, I think they kind of allude. Here's the thing. I'm not going to say anything about that until we get freaking Eris's backstory, because there's so much more to that. And I need to know what it is. I need his Reese moment, because I think we all know he's not who he portrays himself to be.
But he comes off so, like, what does Dwight Schrute say? That flea that's so smug. He just walks around so smug. He comes off so smug. And I just feel like he would be the one male to really, like, kind of put Nesta in her place if she needed it. But then if he had this sensitive side, for her to be the only one that, like, gets to see that of him. Oh, I would love that. But yes, I think Cassian does that too.
I was just about to say, I actually think
he does that too,
because she doesn't need someone who's like her. That would be way too much. Cassian balances her out well, but he has enough balls to stop
enough
her.
Backbone. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when she is being
no,
too
they
much.
work. They work. Yeah. They sure do.
So again, until we get more of Eris's story, I don't want to say I think he'd be a better fit, but I, at this point, also don't think he'd be a better fit, just because I think Cassian, she needs like a golden retriever, and that's what he is.
Oh, well put. Okay, so moving on to point 2 of what plot points could have been problematic or admirable. House of Flame and Shadow. This, to me personally, this one was more problematic. And like I said, when I first read this book, I was like, 5 stars. I'm sobbing. Amazing. And then I read reasons for why people didn't like it. And I sat back and was like, ooh, I took the L here. I think that I don't like this either, because I totally agree with all of these points. For story's sake, it was good, but comparatively to SJM's other works, not her best. So, House of Flame and Shadow. There were some obvious redirections and plot holes that have not been confirmed yet, because we still have a Crescent City 4. I think that was actually confirmed recently.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that, because I think part of my frustration just in general was I thought Crescent City was announced as a 3-book series. So unless she's changed her mind, and that was also part of my biggest issue with it, is that it was announced as a 3-book series, and each book was named after one of the houses, but there were 4 houses.
There's 4 houses.
I don't want to say OCD, because I'm not OCD, but like, it does drive me absolutely crazy. So if I actually had OCD, I can't imagine how annoying it would be to know that there's 3 books and 4 houses. But I think everyone's just assuming there's going to be a 4th, because I mean, a lot of it was like kind of wrapped up. There's still some things that we could see her expanding on.
Much to be desired with the Ocean Queen and Therian,
and especially
Sathia's
knowing
story.
Especially knowing that the one house that's left is the House of Many Waters. So naturally, that's like the direction it would go in anyways.
And I can't say, SJM said this, because I don't know, but I did, in doing all this research, see a couple people on Reddit say that Crescent City 4 was confirmed recently. So that's my high hope, is that we're not done with this, and we're not going to find out all the answers to those plot holes in crossover books, but instead an actual designated Crescent City 4 book. But until then, we're going to assume that, these weren't written maybe to the full potential that they could have been.
Yes.
So to start, let's talk about Jesiba's backstory. We get her full story. Yeah. It seems like, though, that it was written just to be kind of a saving grace to Bryce in the end, and for no other reason. There was no alluding in the first 2 books to, Jesiba's possibly more than what she seems. It was just, that's Jesiba, cranky old librarian. She told Ethan Also, why Ethan? Why did she tell Ethan of all
Freaking
people?
Ethan. I hate Ethan.
That she was a human cursed by Apollyon to live an immortal life. She trades her life for Bryce's in the end. However, if Jesiba didn't want an immortal life, as she explained in depth, why not trade it long ago? You're telling me there was nobody else that could have watched your books other than the guy who like messes up 10 million times in this book?
Yeah. You waited 15,000 years to pick Ethan?
Pick Ethan.
The guy who literally, like you said, made the poorest choices in the entire series, did not follow through on one thing, but
so it just seems like
worth him watching his books after, and especially after having like 3 conversations with him.
Right.
Well, except
exactly. It was just quick.
She picks Bryce because Bryce is the one who ends up with, which that makes way more sense.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. I just think, so we know that like she traded her life for Bryce, and with the like intention of Bryce protecting everything. And obviously Bryce had proven herself like at that point that she was trustworthy and able to protect it. But I agree.
It just seemed like a really weird backstory to write in, to be really coincidental that someone could swap a life for Bryce's in the end, someone that we weren't super attached to, but became immortal, and she can transfer that immortality. It just was odd. And it seemed like a redirection of Jesiba. I think she just wanted to wrap it up.
For the first 2 books, she's really like mysterious, and we don't like, we know obviously like her name, she's kind of, everyone thinks she's a sorceress, or they call her a sorceress. They know that she defected and she's a part of the House of Flame and Shadow, and just like all this stuff. But like we also then wait, like I can't remember maybe exactly when we find this out because I read the books so fast, but I want to say it wasn't until the 3rd. It might have been earlier, but we've then all of a sudden, it's not just like, oh, she defected and she's in the House of Flame and Shadow. We randomly find out she's second in line, like second in command.
Yes.
In the House of Flame and Shadow.
Yes.
So like, how the heck did that happen?
Where did that come from? Yeah.
I didn't really realize that someone who could defect could also then work, like be that high up in the other house.
For argument's sake, I don't think you can. I think it was just written in.
Exactly. So,
and now here I am saying I don't think you can, and it was written in for a book that I am not the author of, nor is this place real. I'm just like, it doesn't work that way. I know. Okay, so if you're screaming at us, if you're screaming at us through your phone saying you guys are making up whatever points, that point was strong, please listen to my other 3, where I feel like that was the weakest of my 4 points. The next one is going to be better. The whole thing with Sigrid. Oh, boy. So I think we all were just like, what the heck? So to me personally, that's my opinion. It seemed like this whole story was teed up so that Sigrid would firstly be Ethan's mate, and then next be Prime. And then now she's the Reaper bad guy, and this just was not it for me. I personally felt like Sarah just kept changing her mind and then was like, I'm too far into the book and I don't want to rewrite. But what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to tell you where she lost me with this storyline. She lost me when she had the sprite name her Sigrid. That it went downhill from there. I reread it 4 times because I'm like, this cannot be right. Like, and I understand this is a fantasy book and the names are what they are, but Sigrid, are we kidding? Like, and so I was like, oh man, this is dumb. And then, like he risked so much to save her.
I know.
Only to literally kill her 10 chapters later on accident. That's the best part. It was an accident. Like, and so when I kind of was kidding when I was like, she lost me about Sigrid. Not really, but also, yes. It was when he like killed her, like dead. Not, and cause like I kept waiting for when he was like, they were fighting and she wrote in there that he intended on grabbing her shoulder, but she moved at the last minute and he ripped through her throat or something. And like her head was only attached by like nothing, essentially.
Only attached by nothing.
Yep. I was I'm waiting for it to be like, and then he woke up from this dream, and
Me
like,
too.
and then it
Me
just
too.
kept going, and then honestly, I didn't believe it. I'm like 10 chapters later, I'm like, I don't think he was dreaming. Like, I
call it right now.
I
think he's awake.
I didn't believe it until they had left the Viper Queen's fighting ring, like whatever they were with the Viper Queen, until they had left. I was like, that happened. This isn't some weird sick joke. This actual, and then because then I was like, what could she, like, the possible motive be at this point? Because like you said, it made so much sense when he found her, and the thought was that she would be the next Prime. Why else would the random seer or whatever, I don't remember what they called him, in that tank happen to be the long lost Endier and heir, the only one who could challenge Sabine with the current status of the wolves? Like,
and so that's exactly the review's point of like, some plot points just seem to go nowhere, and that was a huge plot point for her to end up as a Reaper. And I really just feel like, to me, problematic. This one was problematic. So
very problematic. I agree.
Yes. Okay. Third point here in House of Flame and Shadow: the need for a literal hologram explanation. What was that? Like, okay, Sarah, I love you, but what was that?
I know. I hated that so much.
I wrote here, there were seriously 3,000 pages between the 3 books that could have had a slow reveal, pointed to an explanation in a clear way, with a dramatic, just something that made more sense. But it seemed like the rush of this explanation was just maybe due to a lack of storylining, and now we just need to wrap up some reveals to get through the rest of House of Flame and Shadow. And I was just like, you had, again, 3,000 pages to not have a hologram version of Thea explain this.
It was the daughter.
Oh, I don't remember her name.
Her name started with an S, but I can't remember. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It wasn't really her. It was like Star Wars. It was Star Wars version in my mind of like a weird hologram. That's like what I pictured. But oh man, yeah, I did not love that at all.
And also, the explanation was slightly unclear to me, and maybe it's because I'm a bad reader, but like I had to reread that a couple times because it's all of a sudden all these new characters, all this backstory, their opening port. It was a lot. It was a lot to take in.
My whole thing, she did a lot of world building, which she does, and honestly, like the first half of Earth and Blood was a little hard. It was a little hard to comprehend, and like we're taking it all, like the story all in, while we're also trying to figure out where everything is and trying to make sense of what's going on. And so I will say I think it took me the longest of all her series to get interested in this. But the ending of that book was 11 out of 10. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So
Loved
good.
it.
I was so hooked by the end of the first book.
Right.
And she just created such a unique world. And honestly, like, I know a lot of people even say the crossover was rushed. I'm going to even go so far as to say I think it was, but not because like the concept of a crossover was rushed. I think she created between the first 2 books, because the House of Sky and Breath is my favorite. I love the first book, but the House of Sky and Breath is my favorite. Yeah, because I love the ending of the first book is my favorite like portion of the entire series. But the second book was consistently good, and so I like enjoyed from the beginning to the end of that one.
It's fitting then that we are both wearing blue today.
It sure is. What a coinky dink. But I just feel like she created such a good story with the first 2, and then what it feels like is, well, we announced that it was gonna be a 3-book series, so we got to wrap it up in 3 books, and so she just kind of like finished everything.
Yes.
When this would have been so good if it had been like 5 or 6 books. Yeah. Because of how she wrote the first 2. And like how detailed and lengthy and all the explanations were. And
Yeah.
then we get to the last book, and it's like boom, 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 and we're done. And
Yes.
so it felt it like reading it. I was getting whiplash like with everything that was going on.
Yep, fair points. All fair points. And so that leads me to the fourth reason that the redirect. I just believe there was so much redirection that we were just getting lost in the sauce here. So Sophie and Emile's storyline. What the heck? This whole buildup of Thunderbirds and what they are and how big they're going to be to find out that they're both dead. Now, again, we don't have Crescent City 4 yet, and I have heard theories that Sophie is actually still... I think you told me that theory, that Sophie's actually alive.
Crack theory that Sophie's still alive, and if you haven't listened to last week's episode, here's the TLDR.
So, the Thunderbirds... Oh, so I'm so sorry. I didn't even hear you were going to go into that. Just...
I was like, oh, okay.
Go ahead.
The TLDR is... Yes, they found a body, quote unquote, but it was never, the sheet was never pulled back, so we never confirmed it was her face. All Cormac did was kiss her hand, and I'm not convinced it was her because she says in the beginning of Sky and Breath, after she rescued her brother and the other kids or whatever, that they tortured her and ripped out all her fingernails. And that would have happened if she actually did die when she supposedly did in the storyline. That would have been like hours before her death. And her fingernails would not have grown back. And you're telling me Cormac, the man who loved her, would not have been like absolutely disgusted by the state of her hands? Like beyond just the ripped out fingernails, but she was tortured. Like you're telling me there was no scars, bruises, cuts, nothing on her hands? I don't know. Fat chance. I don't buy it. I don't think he would have just been like kissing it and like not appalled or like started bawling or anything. I don't think that. That's all. It's a crack theory. There's zero evidence outside of that, and that's my thoughts.
Small side note. I actually thought I heard someone tell me that fingernails do still grow after you die, and that's like a really disgusting fun fact. And so I looked it up to like prove you wrong. But I was proven wrong, guys. Fingernails do not grow back after you die. All growth ceases when you die.
I was going to say, I would be shocked if that's the case because your body is no longer functioning. So for your fingernails to continue to grow, I'd actually also be pissed because mine grow so slow when being alive. And if they were to continue to grow into death and they looked better than they do now, I'd be angry.
Fair enough. Okay, so
anyways,
that
sorry.
is it on... Oh, wait. Yeah, well, I think...
Thunderbirds.
Okay, yes, Thunderbirds. Oops.
I agree with the fact that I think that, like, honestly, we would have been better off had she not even just introduced the idea of Thunderbirds. Because she mentions
or Sophie
them.
and Emile. We didn't need them at all.
I know, and if you haven't listened to past Hot Goss episodes with us, Ellie was not a fan of that storyline.
No, it's pointless.
Didn't care. Well, I mean, it's not pointless. It was kind of like the basis of the entire second book. They're trying to find them.
But then, like, okay, so then they did, maybe, and I don't remember if it's the second or third, and then what? And then nothing? They got the code? You're telling me they couldn't have found a code
they found
in a different
Emile
way
in the
without
second,
introducing
and then they found her body
two
in the
characters?
third,
I think, honestly, exactly what you're about to say. I think if the Thunderbird situation was not attached to their names, then I probably would have liked the storyline more if they were just humans that they were trying to protect, because Bryce would go after just humans. But
well, exactly, that fits her character for sure.
Yeah.
No,
I don't
yeah.
know. But then I guess
did
there'd be no
like,
point for the villains to go after them because they wouldn't be in danger if they were just humans.
Well, I think she could have written another reason. No, we're not making an excuse for this.
Yeah, no.
There could have been another reason that the powerful, like, I can't remember what they call them now in the book. The Veneer.
Yes.
Were after two random humans. She could have easily written something without it being an explanation of an entire another. I mean, they would be kind of.
I guess it could even just be it could even be Sophie had the codes, exactly the same storyline. She had the codes and whatever, and she knew some information that could take them all down.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have to be Thunderbirds. So,
the Thunderbird
yeah, I'm back on this. Yeah, they did not need to be Thunderbirds. And for it to be like, oh, the only humans with powers, and then not go into that, and then be like, but they all are dead now. Just dead. Yeah. The end. Yet again, could be a Crescent City 4 plotline. That'd be cool. But right now it's not. And so to me, I'm like, what the heck was that? Where did you were like, never mind. The story's going to be 4,000 pages if I write that in. So let's just cut that, because that's, to me, what just happened.
This was, also, I don't want to like cut you off or anything, but before we move on, this was your last point in House of Flame and Shadow, right? Because if you do, if it is, I have one that I want to throw in here.
Oh, please. This
is nothing to do. No, this has everything to do with what we're talking. I was gonna say this is just something I didn't like, but I'm taking a firm stance on this.
Okay.
I hated, and if you disagree with me, that's fine. I'm so glad you liked it. I wish I liked it. But can we talk about how stupid it was that the conscience of Hunt's ex-girlfriend in a robot suit is saved him to save Bryce?
I liked this point.
No.
I liked that story.
Here's the thing. Especially after we learn that the way she loved Hunt was actually really selfish, and she never actually loved him. She loved, like, the cause and the fight more than him, and always put that before their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I literally, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, now her consciousness in what I imagine to look like Buzz Lightyear's suit is, I do imagine that as well, is the savior of this story. Yeah, right. That's so dumb. It felt like, to me, it felt like when a commercial adds in a dog just for, like, the sympathy, or like a movie and, like, the dog dies and you know that, like, that's gonna get you. That to me felt like Sarah's dog. Like, it was her dog storyline.
I am a subscriber to the cheap theatrics, because was I crying? Yes.
I rolled my eyes. I couldn't roll them harder.
Tears dripping from my eyes. Guys, I unfortunately do not subscribe to this one. I thought that was tastefully put in. I did not love Shahar's backstory, but the fact that I felt like it didn't even matter. It's the fact that she had any relationship with Hunt and the revolution that they were trying to see through, and that the fact that they got it done and Shahar was able to help finish that. I just liked it. Okay. But I can see how one may not enjoy the ex coming back.
I'm glad that you did, and for anyone else that likes it, honestly, like, I wish I did. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. For me, that was just like, no, that wasn't the cherry on top of the the cherry on top was freaking Ethan. I've heard it's supposed to be Ethan, but I will never say that. Ethan and Tharian not making it back with any but 2 of the antidote vials. That was the cherry on top for me. I almost stopped reading the end of the book at that point. I'm like, I'm done. I can't do it. They are so pointless.
That also was a weird write-in. Okay, so let's be done with House of Flame and Shadow, because this third point is going to blow your mind, because it blew mine. Because there's things I just didn't know. And honestly, a lot of you listeners, if you are well into this fandom, you probably know all of this already. But stick around, because I might mention something that'll make you go, what? Okay, so point 3. Let's just talk for a second about a good example of redirection within the Maas-iverse.
Yes,
which would be Throne of Glass. Plug, if you are reading through Throne of Glass right now and you would like to join our book club, we have episodes every Wednesday.
Yes. Also, wait, hold on. Can I guess what this is before you say it?
Guess. Yeah.
Was Rowan not the intended
Correct.
mate?
Correct.
Oh, thank
God. But there's so much to go into that. Okay, and I will start.
I don't care. I'm excited to hear it. I'm just so glad to know that she didn't intend to make cousins mates.
Exactly, and I write that in too. I know. Okay. So
Okay,
I think all the
continue.
readers were confused, which ended up playing out really well for Sarah in the end,
Honestly.
with Rowan and Aelin's relationship at the start. That is because it was not initially supposed to be a romance. He clearly started out as an older brother figure, and I think that is why she wrote in the cousins situation. Melissa and I
Makes
are hung
sense.
up on the cousins thing. We were like, why isn't
I'll
anyone
never let
talking
it
about this?
go.
This is horrible.
I will never let this go.
Now there's an explanation for us. We can
Thank
release
God.
that into the air. So in Air of Fire, he sees Aelin naked, lightweight, no reaction. They share a bed, lightweight, no reaction.
Yeah.
And his whole backstory is literally tattooed along his face, biceps, sides, and thighs, and calves. All of that.
Yeah.
His whole backstory on how he lost his mate. That's huge. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
So we were not sitting here like, they're going to fall in love. We were like, he's a bully, and maybe someday, maybe they'll be acquaintances.
He's a bully. Man, didn't we all think that, though? The way he said you would have benefited the world so much more if you had died 10 years ago, my jaw could not have been further on the floor.
My jaw made a divot into the ground.
Unlikely alliances, at best, was all I was hoping for.
We were rooting for one friendly sentence, and that was it.
For him to maybe say, "I'm sorry."
I know, honestly. So the biggest plot twist of the century was to find out in was it Empire of Storms that his mate wasn't actually, it was Empire of Storms, that his mate wasn't actually his mate, but it was a manipulation that Maeve created to keep him away from knowing that Aelin was his mate. So
honestly, if we're gonna be honest,
yeah,
I didn't love that explanation, and it makes a lot more sense now knowing that wasn't her original intention for it.
Right. Yeah.
It just felt like no one should be able to be that powerful to I don't know. I didn't
exactly.
hate it. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't crazy about that being. I loved that
they
we
were
didn't see
mates.
it. Yeah, well, and that I like you said, I would have never seen it coming because we thought he had one.
Exactly.
So I like the reveal. I just felt like I didn't love the way it was revealed was how she was tricking everyone for hundreds of years. But anyways, that's all.
Yeah. So that's great input, because that leads me to the next point. This left some plot holes for the readers. Case in point. Why did Maeve manipulate Rowan? What exactly did that do to weaken Aelin in the long run? And then why did she allow for him to be with her and Wendlin in Air of Fire? It made no sense why she would create that division in his mind and between them, and then pair them together and be like, yeah, you're gonna watch over her and all that. It didn't add up.
It probably had more to do with the fact that she was convinced that she had covered this up and they wouldn't be able to figure it out. So it's it doesn't matter. And he was number one in her cadre, so it would have been, I think, a slap in the face if she had sent someone else to do that job. So to me, it wasn't weird.
Yeah, but
that
if
she
you
had
went to
paired
the
them
point
up.
to make a fake mate in someone's mind, I think you would also make up a good excuse, or even blind everyone else to thinking Rowan's not number one. Instead, he's number two, and send Fenris or something to be Aelin's overseer. If you're really trying that hard to not get them together, there's just some kind of plot holes there, but ultimately it worked out in the end because we liked how that story turned out. And so, reasons for this, I'm going to explain why Rowan was not intended to be her mate. Did you know that back in 2002, there was an original draft of this series called Queen of Glass, where Rowan was just a mentor and Aelin ended up with Dorian in the end?
Oh, shut up.
I'm so serious.
There's so many people that probably prefer that ending.
I know.
I don't know if I'm one of them, but I wouldn't hate it.
I want to read it.
Kale, and I was about to throw up.
Well, and I wonder, okay, well, we'll put a pin in that. We're coming back to that.
Yes.
Don't forget that
Okay.
point. So Sarah uploaded this story, The Queen of Glass, to Fiction Press in 2002, and it became one of the most popular stories on the website. So in hopes of getting it published around 2008, she took it down. Yeah. And when Bloomsbury released the book, hold on, am I getting my dates wrong? Nope. When Bloomsbury released the book, it held the title Throne of Glass. So the story was divided into 3 parts, which was later adapted into the first 4 books of the series, which makes sense that up until Heir of Fire, everything seems to be going on track for either Kale or Dorian to be the mate. Even so, we'll come back to that, Pim. While she wrote Dorian as the endgame for Aelin originally, we obviously see that she's rewriting. Like, she changed the whole title. And I guess if people had read this story online, maybe she wanted to switch it up too, to add an element of surprise. So I wonder if she did initially intend for Kale to be Aelin's mate, because there is a line in Heir of Fire where Rowan talks about Kale being her mate, or Aelin's mate, and he says, like, do you want me to tell you if he is, because he can smell it on her. And she's like, no, don't tell me.
That is weird to me. If he was actually her mate, but Maeve had done some weird mind tricks to make everyone think that she wasn't, would she then also, like, sent Aelin to make it seem like Aelin had a different mate then too?
I don't know.
I'm not liking this.
We're going to need to get Sarah on the show.
Anyways, that's interesting, though, about Dorian being the OG endgame.
It makes so much sense that it's so clear the story's going one direction until Heir of Fire, and then Queen of Shadow comes around, and that's what we're reading right now. And everything shifts because Rowan shows up, and we're like, oh, we love Rowan, and they should be together, and they're being flirty, and that makes it just makes so much more sense. But in Heir of Fire, we're like, he's a brother. He's a father figure to this girl. They are cousins. Yeah. There's no romance. And it threw everyone off. And that's the point where, personally, I liked it more that their romance came about, because we really saw the shift to friends. It wasn't a speedy enemies to lovers. It was enemies to friends. And that's like what makes that book so dear in my heart. So it worked out well for her.
I agree. I like that. I could have done without them being cousins, but if she had changed her mind later on, it makes sense. I forgive you, Sarah. Kind of. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of. But I'm actually also glad that outside of the cousin thing, I'm glad that she ended up with Rowan and not Dorian, because I love the friendship that then she wrote between Aelin and Dorian throughout the rest of the series.
Right, exactly.
And the, like, sweet relationship that they end up having. And I think that it's really beautiful to know that they're gonna be the rulers of these 2 separate countries, like, well, I guess not countries, but provinces. And not only are they going to support one another, and it's going to be so opposite from how it had been when his dad was ruling, but they have such a strong foundation. I don't know. I love it. I loved it so much. So I love that they didn't, like, weren't together and then also ruling the, like, territories next to each other. Yeah. It's better.
Yeah. But also, one more thing to add in. Maybe I was wrong and Kale was never meant to be Endgame, but it was supposed to be Dorian, exactly how SJM originally wrote it. It would make so much sense. Do you remember? And when we were going over the first 2 books, I was talking about, why would Dorian, like, have this, I took a breath and decided to give her up forever. But, like, ultimately in my heart, I knew that she was the one. I'm like, why would she write so strongly for Dorian that they were going to end up together, and then just be like, never mind. You know, like, that never came back around. And she wrote such powerful words for him. And then it never came to be. And that makes so much sense.
It does make so much sense. And because honestly, I was like, my guy, let her go. They dated for like a week.
Right.
And then he was like,
he couldn't let her go. Yes.
But then all of a sudden he just goes, and I'm over her. And then, like, 4 pages later, he's like, but I'm not.
Exactly. Like, and it was driving me nuts.
It was. It was. I'm like, pick a lane, dude. Like,
yes.
Also, and I bet that lane better be getting over her, because you've liked her for about 7 hours. So this isn't that end of the world.
Exactly. So ultimately, Sarah, like, fanficked her own story, which is why she ended up with Aelin and Rowan in the end, when they definitely were not supposed to be together. But we love it. It was a perfect plot twist. It was a perfect redirection. And so this is one example where I think that, like, flying by the seat of your pants is the way to go, because 100%. I like this story way more than I would have liked Aelin and Dorian, or Aelin and Kale ending up together. So
I would have preferred Aelin and the sewer that she spent time in.
Jeez. All right.
Here's my hot take. Kale never redeemed himself for me in the entire series. Yeah,
you're gonna get some hate.
I don't
hate
care.
that.
There's
a lot of Kale supporters out there.
I know. I didn't really. They came out of the woodworks when I started talking about him.
I know.
I was like,
I love that, though.
Where did these people come from?
Just that the masses chanting Kale on Melissa's
Literally.
comments. It was hilarious. So ultimately, at the end of the day, and here's how I'm going to end this episode, I guess that everything that does not add up within these books can be explained by magic, explained away by a sorcerer made it happen. And that's just the beauty of fantasy, and I'm here for
Ellie,
it.
You
Yes, go ahead.
literally took the words right out of my mouth. I kid you not. I was about to say, and that's the beauty of fantasy. I swear.
Perfect.
Incredible.
There you have it, guys.
Well, we love fantasy books. And even though House of Flame and Shadow was for sure not it for me, I still love Sarah. I still think that she is a genius. And I honestly hope that there is a fourth one at this point to hopefully, honestly, like redeem the story. Similar, not so similar, but like kind of similar from this. Also, I guess like we're pretty much done, so this isn't gonna take long. But if you haven't read the From Blood and Ash series, I'm not gonna spoil.
Should I take my headphones off?
No, I was gonna say I'm not gonna spoil anything for you. I'm not gonna say what happens. I'm just gonna say, kind of like in that series, there is an event that happens. So the original series is 5 books, and then there's a prequel series. And in the original one, something happens in the 4th book that made me want to rip out my hair because it felt so opposite to how she had originally wrote the main characters. And I was so upset because it just made me, I was just so bummed because I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, really? And I thought that the series was ruined for me, but then like the 5th one redeemed it a little bit for me. So
Okay.
I'm hoping that there is another one now, and it's like the 5th book in that series in the sense of it is redemptive and like nostalgic in a way, and kind of like wraps everything up and brings it full circle. So
Yep. That's fair. All right, guys. Well, join us on Wednesday. And again, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, subscribe, all the good stuff.
Yep.
Leave a comment.
On Wednesday, we will be going over part 3 of Queen of Shadows. It's going to be chapters 39 through 56. 38 through 56. Whatever. Around there. And we're excited. Some good stuff happens in this one. I am very excited to talk about part of it. So be there or be square, my guys.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.